similar contract we canceled in New York, again educating transgender and queer farmers on food justice and food equality. I'm not even sure what that means, but apparently the last administration wanted to put our taxpayer dollars towards that. We canceled a $600,000 contract out of Louisiana that was studying the menstrual cycles of transgender men, a $600,000 contract.
The fraud, not just waste and abuse, the fraud has been incredible. You mentioned one, Madam Secretary.
Well, yes, sir. Well, let me just add to that, and thank you. We just had a wonderful cabinet meeting, all aligned on certainly the effort to realign the government. But even at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we've canceled a $300,000 contract educating on food justice for queer and transgender farmers in San Francisco. A similar contract we canceled in New York, again educating transgender and queer farmers on food justice and food equality. I'm not even sure what that means, but apparently the last administration wanted to put our taxpayer dollars towards that. We canceled a $600,000 contract out of Louisiana that was studying the menstrual cycles of transgender men, a $600,000 contract. We canceled another contract out of a university in the middle of the country that focused on getting more diversity, equity, and inclusion into our pest management industry. Again, these are nonsensical. It makes zero sense to use taxpayer dollars to fund these. I know these are just a few examples of the hundreds and hundreds that we have found.
Well, a clear case of fraud was with the Small Business Administration, where they were handing out loans, $330 million worth of loans to people under the age of 11. I think the youngest, Kelly, was a 9-month-old who got a $100,000 loan. That's a very precocious baby we're talking about here.
We're tackling the fraud, waste, and abuse in the agency. We've seen, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud go unprosecuted, so we're taking that on. We have a zero tolerance policy for fraud, and we continue to crack down on it and make sure people are held accountable.
It's amazing. And you have a lot of that. You found far too much of it. It's a pure fraud. We like to use the words waste and abuse because they sort of sound good, but many of these things are pure fraud. Now, there was a contract that you've heard about where Stacey Abrams got $2 billion just before we took over, and it was a rush to get her the money, and that was environmental, and nobody knows what she was doing. But $2 billion. If you got $2 million, that's a lot. If you got 200,000, that's a lot. But this was $2 billion was given. Lee, do you want to talk about that? And the other one that was even worse?
EPA has now canceled over $22 billion worth of contracts. $2 billion going to this NGO that Stacey Abrams was tied to. They received only $100 in 2023. And then the Biden administration gave them $2 billion. The director of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund saw his former employer get $5 billion. So $20 billion went to just 8 NGOs, and they're all pass-throughs. And then they were giving it to other entities, many of them were pass-throughs. And what you have is all these extra middlemen, they're taking their cut. And the taxpayer ends up getting screwed. They're losing out on all this hard-earned money. They can't afford to have the federal government waste. The partnership with DOGE and Elon Musk has been incredible at EPA. Their team is very talented. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them. And of course, this mandate from President Trump to make sure that we identify every last penny, whether we're saving $50,000, $5 million, or $22 billion. We will not rest until every last penny is saved. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to do this for the American public.